The broken streetlight flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows across the narrow alley behind Murphy's gym. Marcus. Chun adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses for the third time in as many minutes, the familiar weight of them sliding down his sweat-slicked nose. The prescription lenses thick enough to make his dark eyes appear unnaturally large caught the intermittent light as he pressed himself against the brick wall. 3 figures blocked the mouth of the alley, their laughter echoing off the grimy walls like hyenas circling wounded prey. The biggest one, a mountain of muscle named Tank Rodriguez, cracked his knuckles with deliberate slowness. "Look at this nerd," Tank sneered, his gold tooth glinting. "Thinks he can just waltz into our neighborhood with those Coke bottle glasses. And that fancy backpack." He gestured mockingly at Marcus's worn leather satchel, which contained not textbooks as they assumed, but something far more dangerous. Marcus's fingers twitched slightly, a motion so subtle it might have been mistaken for nervousness. The 2 smaller men flanking Tank, Rico and Damon, stepped closer. Rico pulled out his phone, aiming the camera at Marcus with a cruel grin. "This is gonna be viral gold," Rico laughed. "Nerds get schooled in the real world." What they didn't know, what? Nobody in this rough corner of downtown Detroit knew was that Marcus Chen wasn't just any computer programmer. 6 months ago, he'd been the CI's most promising young operative, specializing in deep cover infiltration. The glasses weren't just for show. They contained micro cameras and a heads-up display that could calculate trajectories, identify pressure points, and assess threat levels in real time. But Marcus had walked away from that life. He'd tried to. The memories of Prague, of the mission that went sideways, of Sarah's blood on his hands, they followed him everywhere. He'd taken a job as a software developer, moved to a quiet apartment, and convinced himself he could be normal. Tank stepped forward, his massive frame casting Marcus in shadow. "You got 2 choices, Four Eyes. Hand over your wallet and that fancy bag, or we take 'em off your unconscious body." Marcus looked up at Tank through his lenses, and for just a moment, the heads-up display flickered to life. Target assessment, 6'4", approximately 280 pounds, favors right cross. Weak spot at left knee from old injury, evidenced by slight favoring. Threat level, moderate. "I really don't want any trouble," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the careful modulation he'd learned to project harmlessness. It was the same tone that had gotten him close enough to 3 arms dealers in Belgrade to plant tracking devices on their phones. Tank's fist came without warning, a haymaker aimed directly at Marcus's face. In the split second before impact, Marcus made a choice that would unravel the carefully constructed normal life he'd tried to build. He moved. The motion was fluid, economical, precise. Marcus ducked left, his body rotating as Tank's fist whistled through empty air. His right hand came up in a sharp arc, knuckles connecting with Tank's solar plexus with surgical precision. Tank doubled over, gasping, and Marcus's left elbow found the exact pressure point behind Tank's ear. The big man crumpled like a demolished building. Rico fumbled for something in his jacket, a knife. Marcus's enhanced vision confirmed, but Marcus was already there. A quick grab, a twist, and Rico's wrist was bent at an angle that sent the blade clattering to the asphalt. Marcus's knee found Rico's sternum, and the smaller man joined his leader on the ground. Demon had barely processed what was happening when Marcus spun toward him. The third attacker raised his hands, eyes wide with terror. "Please, man, I don't want." Marcus paused, his fist inches from Demon's throat. The killing blow was right there, muscle memory guiding his hand to the precise spot that would crush the man's larynx. It would be quick, clean. Final. Instead, Marcus stepped back. "Run," he said quietly. The demon didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled over his fallen companions and disappeared into the night, his footsteps echoing off the alley walls. Marcus stood alone among the unconscious bodies, his chest rising and falling in controlled breaths. He adjusted his glasses with a trembling hand, and for the first time in months, the familiar weight of them felt like a lie. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello, Marcus. The voice was crisp, professional, and unfortunately familiar. Nice work in the alley. Though I notice you've gotten soft, the old Marcus Chun would never have let a witness escape. Marcus closed his eyes. Hello. Director Hayes, we need to talk. Romano's Cafe, 20 minutes, and Marcus, bring the glasses. The line went dead. Marcus looked down at Tank's unconscious form, then at his own hands. They weren't shaking anymore. He'd tried so hard to be normal. But normal people didn't take down 3 armed men in 15 seconds. Normal people didn't carry CIA-issued tactical equipment, disguised as prescription eyewear. And normal people definitely didn't get phone calls from their former handlers. After supposedly dying in Prague 6 months ago, Marcus picked up his satchel and walked toward the mouth of the alley. Behind him, Tank groaned and began to stir. In a few minutes, the man would wake up with a massive headache and a story nobody would believe about the nerd with glasses who fought like a demon dot as Marcus emerged onto the main street, his reflection caught in a storefront window. The glasses made him look harmless, academic, forgettable. It was the perfect disguise for a man who could kill with his bare hands. He'd thought he was done with this life. But as he walked toward Romano's Cafe and whatever Director Hayes wanted, Marcus realized life had never been done with him. The war was about to begin again. And this time, he wouldn't be running from it. Romano's Cafe sat at the corner of Michigan Avenue and 3rd Street, like a relic from a simpler time. Red checkered tablecloths, the smell of garlic and oregano, and walls covered with faded photographs of the old neighborhood. At this hour, nearly midnight, it should have been closed. The fact that it wasn't told Marcus everything he needed to know about Director Hayes' influence. Marcus spotted her immediately in the back corner booth, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun, sharp blue eyes scanning the room with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent 30 years in intelligence work. Catherine Hayes looked every inch the Washington bureaucrat in her tailored navy suit, but Marcus knew better. He'd seen her field strip in a K-47 in under 30 seconds. She didn't look up as he approached, instead continuing to read from a manila folder that Marcus recognized as a classified file. His file, judging by the thickness. "You're 4 minutes late," Hayes said without lifting her gaze. "Traffic or conscience? Stopped to check if I was being followed." Marcus slid into the seat across from her, setting his satchel carefully beside him. Old habits. Good habits. Ones that kept you alive in Prague. Her eyes finally met his, and Marcus felt the familiar chill of her assessment. Though not everyone was so fortunate. The mention of Prague hit like a physical blow. Sarah's face flashed in his mind. Brilliant, dedicated Sarah Morrison, his partner, and so much more. 3 bullets to the chest because Marcus had missed a sniper's nest. Because he'd been distracted by the wrong intel. Because he'd failed. "I told you 6 months ago," Marcus said carefully. "I'm done. Marcus Chen died in that explosion. I'm just a software developer now." Hayes smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. "Software developer. Yes, I read your LinkedIn profile. Very convincing. Though I notice you forgot to mention your little demonstration tonight." She slid a tablet across the table. The screen showed security footage from the alley, crystal clear. Despite the poor lighting, Marcus watched himself take down Tank with surgical precision, the entire fight lasting exactly 14 seconds. "Traffic cameras have gotten much better," Hayes observed. "High definition, excellent night vision. Of course, this particular camera doesn't officially exist, and the footage will disappear after our conversation. But it does raise interesting questions about your commitment to civilian life." Marcus forced his breathing to remain steady. 3 men tried to mug me. I defended myself. With techniques taught at exactly 3 facilities worldwide. Fort Benning isn't one of them. Hayes tapped the tablet, zooming in on the moment Marcus struck Tank's pressure point. That's Krav Maga modified with system joint manipulation. Very specific training. Very expensive training. The waitress approached, an elderly woman with kind eyes who seemed completely unbothered by serving coffee at midnight. Hayes ordered espresso. Marcus asked for water, earning a disappointed look from the woman, who clearly took pride in the cafe's coffee. "What do you want, Catherine?" Marcus asked once they were alone again. "I want to offer you a job. A real one this time, not the software developer cover story." Hayes opened the manila folder, revealing a series of photographs. "Are you familiar with Viktor Kozlov?" Marcus studied the images. A middle-aged man with Slavic features, expensive suits, and eyes like a shark, Russian arms dealer. Specializes in chemical weapons. Last I heard, he was operating out of Eastern Europe. He was. 3 weeks ago, he relocated to Detroit. Specifically, to a warehouse complex in Corktown, less than 2 miles from where you're currently pretending to be a normal person. The implications hit Marcus immediately. Chemical weapons in a major American city. It gets worse. Our intelligence suggests he's not here to sell, he's here to deploy. Something big, something that would make 9/11s look like a minor inconvenience. Hayes leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "We have exactly 72 hours before whatever he's planning goes operational." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. "Use someone else. You've got dozens of operatives better suited for this." "Actually, I don't." Kozlov is paranoid, careful, and has successfully identified and eliminated 3 CIA assets in the past month. But he has one weakness. He's a snob. Educated at Oxford, considers himself intellectually superior to the common criminal element. He's been recruiting from local universities, looking for bright minds to help with the technical aspects of his operation. Understanding dawned on Marcus like a cold sunrise. "You want me to go undercover as a graduate student. Computer science. PhD candidate, specifically. The glasses, the nervous demeanor, the complete inability to throw a punch, it's the perfect cover." Kozlov would never suspect that the stammering nerd applying for a research position used to be our most effective deep cover operative. Hayes slid another photograph across the table. This one showed a young woman with auburn hair and green eyes, probably mid-20s, wearing a lab coat and safety goggles. She was beautiful in an understated way, intelligent eyes behind simple wire-rimmed glasses. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," Hayes continued. "Biochemist, PhD from Stanford, currently working as a research assistant at Wayne State University. 3 days ago, she disappeared. We believe Kozlov has her, and we believe she's the key to whatever he's planning." Marcus stared at the photograph, seeing not Elena, but Sarah. Another brilliant woman. Another mission where everything could go wrong. His hands began to tremble slightly, and he clenched them into fists under the table. "I can't," he said quietly. "I won't be responsible for another death." "Elena Vasquez is already dead unless we act," Hayes replied with brutal honesty. "Along with approximately 500,000 other people if Kozlov succeeds. Whatever guilt you're carrying about Prague, whatever demons you're fighting, shelve them. Because right now, you're the only person who can stop this." The cafe was silent, except for the hum of the espresso machine and the distant sound of traffic. Marcus looked around at the faded photographs on the walls. Families, celebrations, ordinary people living ordinary lives. In 72 hours, how many of those lives would be gone? "What's the extraction plan?" he heard himself ask. Hayes smiled, and this time it almost seemed genuine. "First, we get you credentialed. New identity, complete academic background, research credentials that will pass any scrutiny. You'll be Dr. Michael Zhao, recent PhD in advanced computer modeling from MIT. She pulled out a thick envelope and set it on the table. Documentation, credit cards, apartment lease. You're officially a visiting researcher at Wayne State. Kozlov's people have been recruiting there for 2 weeks. And then? Then you do what you do best. Get close to Kozlov, identify the threat, locate Elena if she's still alive, and find a way to stop whatever's coming. Hayes paused, her expression becoming deadly serious. But Marcus and I cannot stress this enough. This is a solo operation. No backup, no extraction team, no cavalry coming over the hill. If this goes sideways, you're on your own, just like Prague. Marcus pushed the thought away and reached for the envelope. The moment his fingers touched the manila paper, he felt the familiar transformation beginning. The software developer was already fading, replaced by the predator that had never really gone away. 72 hours, he said. 71 hours. And 43 minutes, Hayes corrected, checking her watch. Your first contact is tomorrow morning, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, head of the Computer Science Department at Wayne State. She's been briefed on your cover story and will help facilitate introductions to Kozlov's recruitment network. Marcus pocketed the envelope and stood, slinging his satchel over his shoulder. The glasses felt different, now not like a disguise, but like the sophisticated surveillance equipment they actually were. Catherine, he said as he turned to leave. If I do this, if I stop Kozlov, then I'm really done. No more calls, no more jobs, no more favors. The CIA leaves Marcus Chen alone for good. Hayes nodded. If you stop Kozlov, the agency will consider your debt paid in full. As Marcus walked toward the cafe's exit, he caught his reflection in the front window again. Same thick glasses, same rumpled clothes, same harmless appearance. But something had changed in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there an hour ago. Behind him, Hayes was already making phone calls, setting the operation in motion. In 12 hours, Dr. Michael Zhao would walk onto the Wayne State campus and begin the most dangerous infiltration of his career. Marcus stepped into the Detroit night, and for the first time in 6 months, he felt like himself again. The war had found him after all that. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Wayne State University's computer science building rose like a glass and steel monument to academic achievement, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the aging neighborhood surrounding it. Marcus stood at the main entrance at exactly 9 a.m., his appearance carefully crafted to project harmless academia, rumpled khakis, a button-down shirt with a small coffee stain, deliberately placed, and a worn leather messenger bag stuffed with technical journals. The transformation into Dr. Michael Zhao had been seamless 6 hours of intensive preparation that included memorizing fake academic papers, rehearsing nervous tics, and uploading a completely fabricated but verifiable digital footprint. His glasses now contained updated surveillance equipment, including facial recognition software that could identify targets from 50 yards away. Dr. Jennifer Walsh's office occupied the corner of the 3rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Detroit River. She was younger than Marcus had expected, early 40s, with short-cropped blonde hair and the intense focus of someone accustomed to solving complex problems. When he knocked on her doorframe, she looked up from a computer screen covered in code. Dr. Zhao, I presume? She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Please sit. I understand you're interested in our advanced modeling research. Marcus sat carefully, adjusting his glasses in what appeared to be a nervous gesture, but actually activated the recording function. Yes, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I'm particularly interested in biochemical modeling applications, computational approaches to molecular behavior prediction. It was the perfect opening. Kozlov's operation would need sophisticated computer modeling to predict chemical weapon dispersion patterns, optimal deployment scenarios, and casualty projections. A visiting researcher with those exact skills would be irresistible. Walsh leaned back in her chair, studying him with sharp gray eyes. Interesting timing. We've had several inquiries about that specific research area recently. There's apparently quite a bit of private sector interest in biological modeling. Really? Marcus allowed excitement to creep into his voice, the eager academic thrilled to find commercial applications for his work. What kind of private sector interest? Pharmaceutical companies mostly. Though there was one group, Eastern European investors, I think, looking for consultants on environmental impact studies. Large-scale chemical dispersion modeling for industrial applications. Walsh pulled out a business card and handed it across the desk. They left this, saying they were particularly interested in researchers with advanced degrees and practical experience. The business card was elegant, minimalist. Apex Environmental Solutions. With a phone number and downtown Detroit address. No website, no corporate logo, exactly the kind of front company the CIA would use for a black operation. Or that Viktor Kozlov would use to recruit unwitting academics. They mentioned they were having a reception this evening, Walsh continued. Informal networking event for local researchers. I wasn't planning to attend, but if you're interested in that type of work. Very interested, Marcus said, pocketing the card with hands that trembled slightly, the perfect image of a nervous academic excited about career opportunities. Do you know anything else about them? Not much. The representative who came by was very professional, well-funded judging by his suit and watch. Russian accent, if I had to guess. Seemed particularly interested in researchers who could work ... discreetly. Independent contractors, that sort of thing. Every instinct Marcus had developed over 5 years of covert operations screamed danger. Kozlov was moving fast, probably because his timeline was accelerating. In less than 70 hours, whatever he was planning would go operational. This reception, Marcus said carefully, would it be appropriate for someone like me to attend? I mean, I'm just a visiting researcher. I don't want to impose ... double quotes. Walsh smiled. Dr. Zhao, in academia, there's no such thing as imposing when someone might fund your research. Here's what I'll do, I'll call them this afternoon, mentioning that I've spoken with a brilliant young researcher who's exactly what they're looking for. Consider it a personal introduction. Perfect. Too perfect, maybe, but Marcus couldn't afford to be cautious. Elena Vasquez had been missing for 3 days. In the biochemical weapons business, that might as well be a lifetime. He spent the rest of the morning establishing his cover, visiting the university library, checking out relevant journals, and even attending a graduate seminar on advanced computational modeling. The professors were impressed by his insights, the students intimidated by his apparent expertise. By lunchtime, Dr. Michael Zhao felt real enough to fool anyone who wasn't specifically looking for deception. That at 2:30 p.m. Walsh called his temporary office with good news. Dr. Zhao, I spoke with Apex Environmental Solutions. They're very interested in meeting you. The reception is at 7 p.m. tonight at the Renaissance Center, 42nd floor. They'll have your name at the door. The Renaissance Center. Marcus knew the building well, a complex of interconnected towers in downtown Detroit with excellent security, multiple exit routes, and enough civilian presence to discourage open violence. It was either the perfect place for a legitimate business meeting or an ideal hunting ground for someone recruiting unwitting accomplices. Marcus spent the afternoon preparing. He updated his legend with specific technical details that would appeal to Kozlov, memorized floor plans of the Renaissance Center, and ran combat scenarios in his head. The glasses provided detailed building schematics, security camera locations, and optimal escape routes. At 6:45 p.m., he stood in front of the men's room mirror on the 40th floor, adjusting his tie and reviewing his cover story one final time. Dr. Michael Zhao, brilliant but naive, ambitious but socially awkward. Exactly the kind of person who might miss warning signs in his excitement about career advancement. The elevator to the 42nd floor was crowded with well-dressed professionals, most of them carrying themselves with the confidence that came from academic success or corporate achievement. Marcus recognized the type. He'd been pretending to be one of them for months. The reception was being held in a corporate event space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the Detroit River and the Canadian border beyond. Approximately 50 people mingled in small groups, the conversation a mixture of academic jargon and business networking. Waiters circulated with appetizers and wine, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. It looked perfectly normal. Legitimate. Safe. Marcus's glasses immediately began facial recognition scans, cross-referencing faces against CIA databases. 3 hits came back within the first minute. 2 arms dealers and a former Spetsnaz operative who now worked in private security. All of them were supposed to be in Eastern Europe. Dr. Zhao. A woman's voice, warm and welcoming. Marcus turned to see an attractive brunette in her 30s, approaching with 2 glasses of wine. "I'm Sarah Mitchell from Apex Environmental Solutions. Dr. Walsh spoke very highly of you." Sarah, the same name as his dead partner. Marcus forced his expression to remain neutral as he accepted the wine. "Thank you for including me tonight. This is quite an impressive gathering." "We like to think so. Our clients value intellectual excellence, and we found that the best way to identify talent is to bring brilliant people together and see what happens." Sarah smiled, but her eyes were constantly scanning the room. Professional awareness. Disguised as social grace, she led him toward a small group near the windows, chattering about environmental modeling and corporate consulting opportunities. It was perfect small talk, designed to put him at ease while subtly probing his background and motivations. "Michael, may I call you Michael? We're particularly interested in researchers who can think outside traditional academic constraints. Real-world applications often require creative approaches to problem-solving. Translation: we need someone willing to bend ethical guidelines for the right price." "I'm very interested in practical applications," Marcus replied, allowing enthusiasm to brighten his voice. "Academic research is fulfilling, but I've always believed that knowledge should serve humanity, not just intellectual curiosity." "Excellent attitude. I'd love to introduce you to our project director. He has a fascinating background, advanced degrees from Oxford, extensive experience in both academic and private sector research. I think you two would have a lot in common." She guided him across the room, past clusters of animated conversation and toward a quieter area near the bar. Marcus's glasses tracked movement patterns, identified exit routes, and cataloged potential threats. So far, the evening felt more like legitimate networking than the prelude to kidnapping or recruitment into illegal activities. Then he saw him. Viktor Kozlov stood with his back to the room, engaged in quiet conversation with 2 men Marcus didn't recognize. Even from behind, the arms dealer was unmistakable. Perfectly tailored suit, silver hair, the ramrod posture of someone accustomed to command. When he turned, Marcus got his first clear look at the face from the CIA files. Kozlov was younger then. His photograph suggested maybe 55, with sharp Slavic features and intelligent brown eyes. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything he truly wanted. When those eyes met Marcus's across the room, the arms dealer smiled, a predator recognizing potential prey. "Mr. Kozlov," Sarah called out, her voice carrying just enough deference to indicate hierarchy. "I'd like you to meet Dr. Michael Zhao, the computational modeling expert I mentioned." Kozlov approached with the fluid grace of someone comfortable in his own skin, extending a manicured hand. His grip was firm without being aggressive, his smile warm without reaching his eyes. "Dr. Zhao, Sarah tells me you're exactly what we've been looking for." The accent was subtle, expensive education overlaying Eastern European origins. Tell me, what draws a brilliant young academic to the messy world of commercial application? The question was a test, Marcus realized. Kozlov was evaluating his motivations, looking for the psychological hooks that could be used for manipulation. Honestly? Marcus adjusted his glasses nervously, playing the part of an academic uncomfortable. With direct questions about money. Student loans mostly. 5 years of graduate school and postdoctoral work doesn't leave much room for financial stability. I love research, but I'd also like to own something more valuable than my laptop. Kozlov laughed, a genuine sound that made him seem almost likable. Academic honesty. I appreciate that. Tell me, Dr. Zhao, what do you know about large-scale environmental modeling? Specifically, atmospheric dispersion patterns in urban environments? The question sent ice through Marcus's veins. Atmospheric dispersion modeling was exactly what someone would need to predict how chemical weapons would spread through a city like Detroit. Kozlov wasn't even being subtle about it. It's actually one of my specializations, Marcus replied, allowing excited enthusiasm to overcome his character's nervousness. I've done extensive work on computational fluid dynamics, atmospheric chemistry, and even some consulting on industrial accident scenarios. The mathematics is fascinating. You're essentially trying to predict chaos, but with enough data and processing power, you can achieve remarkable accuracy. Remarkable accuracy, Kozlov repeated, his eyes sharpening with interest. And how accurate? If someone needed to predict, say, the spread of an airborne contaminant through downtown Detroit, what kind of precision could your models achieve? There it was. Kozlov was openly discussing chemical weapon deployment, confident that the naive academic standing before him would never recognize the true nature of the question. With current weather data and detailed topographic information, I could probably achieve 95% accuracy within a 6-hour window, Marcus said, his voice carrying the pride of a researcher discussing his life's work. The key is accounting for building effects, wind patterns, temperature inversions. He launched into a detailed technical explanation, watching Kozlov's eyes light up with each specification. Behind his glasses, Marcus was recording every word, building a case that would put Kozlov away for life, assuming he lived long enough to testify. Fascinating, Kozlov murmured when Marcus finished. Dr. Zhao, I think we need to continue this conversation in a more private setting. Are you free for dinner tomorrow evening? I have some projects I'd very much like to discuss with you. I'd be honored, Marcus replied, and meant it. Tomorrow night, he would be inside Kozlov's operation, close enough to identify the threat, and locate Elena Vasquez, close enough to complete the mission that had started 6 months ago in Prague, or close enough to die trying. Marcus spent the morning of his dinner meeting with Kozlov, doing exactly what Dr. Michael Zhao would do, legitimate academic work that would withstand scrutiny. He attended a faculty seminar on advanced computational methods, contributed meaningfully to discussions about research funding, and even helped a graduate student debug a complex algorithm. The mundane routine helped calm his nerves while maintaining his cover. But beneath the surface, Marcus Chen was preparing for war. His glasses had been updated overnight with additional surveillance capabilities, including chemical detection sensors and enhanced audio recording. The CIA had also provided him with a nearly undetectable tracking device, disguised as a fountain pen, and an emergency beacon hidden in his left molar that could be activated by biting down in a specific pattern. At 6 p.m., a black sedan arrived at his apartment complex. The driver was polite, professional, and almost certainly armed. As they wound through Detroit's downtown core, Marcus memorized the route while maintaining nervous chatter about his excitement over the dinner invitation. Restaurant was Opus One, an upscale establishment in the heart of the financial district. Private dining rooms, exceptional security, and the kind of clientele that valued discretion above all else. Marcus had eaten there once before, during a previous operation, and knew it was a favorite among wealthy criminals who needed to conduct business without electronic surveillance. Kozlov was waiting in a private room on the 3rd floor, studying a tablet while a waiter arranged place settings around an elegant mahogany table. He looked up as Marcus entered, that predatory smile spreading across his face. "Dr. Zhao, punctual as expected. Please sit. I took the liberty of ordering wine. I hope you don't mind." The wine was a 1995 Bordeaux that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Marcus sipped it appreciatively while projecting the nervous excitement of an academic dining with potential benefactors. "This is incredible," he said, gesturing around the opulent dining room. "I feel a bit out of my element, to be honest. Nonsense. Intelligence deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of its origin." Kozlov poured himself wine with practiced ease. "Tell me, Dr. Zhao, what do you know about chemical engineering?" The question was another test, Marcus realized. Kozlov was probing the extent of his knowledge, looking for gaps that might indicate deception or, conversely, expertise that could be useful. "Basic principles only," Marcus replied carefully. "My focus has always been computational modeling rather than practical chemistry. Though I've done some consulting work on industrial accident scenarios, modeling how chemical releases might spread through urban environments." "Industrial accidents," Kozlov mused. "Yes, such terrible things can happen when proper precautions aren't taken. Buildings collapse, chemicals leak, entire city blocks can be affected." His tone was conversational, but his eyes were watching Marcus's reaction carefully. The first course arrived, some kind of elaborate seafood presentation that Marcus barely tasted. His enhanced glasses were recording everything while scanning Kozlov for signs of deception or hidden weapons. So far, the arms dealer seemed genuinely relaxed, confident in his control of the situation. "I have a proposition for you," Kozlov said between bites. "A consulting contract that would be quite lucrative, more money than you'd make in 5 years of university work. The project involves atmospheric dispersion modeling for what my clients call urban renewal scenarios." Urban renewal scenarios. Marcus had to admire Kozlov's euphemisms. "What kind of atmospheric dispersion?" "Chemical compounds, primarily. My clients are concerned about potential industrial accidents in densely populated areas. They want to understand evacuation patterns, casualty projections, optimal response strategies." Kozlov leaned forward slightly. "The work would be completely theoretical, of course. Academic modeling, nothing more." "Of course," Marcus agreed, though every instinct screamed that this was anything but theoretical. "What kind of timeline are we discussing?" "Immediate. The modeling needs to be completed within 48 hours. Kozlov's tone became more businesslike. "I understand it's short notice, but my clients are prepared to compensate you very generously for the rushed schedule." 48 hours. That confirmed Marcus's worst fears. Whatever Kozlov was planning was imminent. Alina Vasquez was running out of time, and so was the city of Detroit. "I'd be very interested," Marcus said, letting avarice creep into his voice. "Though I have to ask, 48 hours is quite aggressive for complex atmospheric modeling. I'd need detailed topographic data, current weather information, specific chemical properties, all of which will be provided, along with a dedicated research facility where you can work without interruption." Kozlov smiled. "My clients value privacy, Dr. Zhao. The facility is secure, well-equipped, and completely isolated from outside distractions. Isolated. That was spy speak for no escape routes and no outside communication. Marcus was being invited to his own kidnapping, disguised as a lucrative consulting opportunity. "That sounds perfect," he said enthusiastically. "When would you need me to start?" "Tonight, actually. I know it's short notice, but time is rather critical." Kozlov signaled the waiter, who immediately began clearing the table despite the fact that they'd barely touched their food. "My car is waiting downstairs. We can discuss contract details during the drive." Marcus felt the familiar pre-mission adrenaline surge, the heightened awareness that came with walking into a trap with no backup and no exit strategy. In 15 minutes, he would be inside Kozlov's operation, surrounded by armed men in an isolated facility. If his cover was blown, he would die quickly and quietly, another casualty in a war most people didn't know existed. But Elena Vasquez was in that facility somewhere, and she was the key to stopping whatever Kozlov had planned for Detroit. "I'm ready when you are," Marcus said, rising from his chair with the eager nervousness of an academic, about to make more money than he'd ever dreamed of. They took the elevator down to the restaurant's private garage, where a black SUV waited with two men Marcus's glasses immediately identified as former military. The driver was clean-shaven and alert, hands positioned where they could reach weapons quickly. The passenger seat occupant was larger, with the build of a heavyweight boxer and scars that suggested combat experience. Marcus climbed into the back seat beside Kozlov, his hands trembling, slightly with what appeared to be nervous excitement, but was actually the careful activation of his emergency tracking beacon. From this point forward, the CIA would know his exact location, assuming they were monitoring, assuming they cared enough to track a supposedly retired operative on an unauthorized mission. The SUV pulled out of the garage and into Detroit's evening traffic. Through the tinted windows, Marcus watched the city pass by normal people living normal lives, unaware that in less than 2 days, their world might end in chemical fire. "The facility is about 40 minutes outside the city," Kozlov explained, pulling out his own tablet and scrolling through what appeared to be financial documents. "Very private, very secure. We'll have everything you need to complete the modeling work." Marcus nodded and made appreciative noises about the opportunity while his enhanced glasses recorded license plates, street signs, and navigation markers. The route led them away from downtown Detroit, through increasingly industrial areas, and finally onto a series of back roads that hadn't seen much traffic in years. The facility, when they finally reached it, was exactly what Marcus had expected. A converted warehouse complex surrounded by chain-link fence and enough security cameras to make a casino nervous. Floodlights illuminated every approach, and Marcus counted at least 6 guards patrolling the perimeter. "Impressive security for a research facility," he observed as they passed through the main gate. "My clients take intellectual property very seriously," Kozlov replied smoothly. "Industrial espionage is a constant concern in today's competitive environment." The SUV stopped in front of the main building, a 3-story structure that had probably housed automotive manufacturing decades ago. Now it looked like a fortress with reinforced windows and entrance doors that belonged in a bank vault. As they climbed out of the vehicle, Marcus's glasses automatically scanned the building's architecture, identifying potential entry and exit points. The structure had been heavily modified. What had once been factory windows were now reinforced with steel mesh, and the loading docks had been converted into a single heavily secured entrance. "Welcome to the future of environmental consulting," Kozlov said with evident pride. "Dr. Zhao, I think you're going to find this quite fascinating." The interior was a study in contrasts, cutting-edge technology housed in an aging industrial shell. Computer workstations lined the walls, multiple monitors displaying complex data streams, and enough processing power to model weather patterns for half the continent. In the center of the main floor, a scale model of downtown Detroit occupied a large table, complete with miniature buildings and topographic detail down to individual city blocks. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The model wasn't for theoretical research, it was for operational planning. Someone had spent considerable time and money creating a perfect replica of the target zone. "Impressive," he managed, his voice carrying academic appreciation rather than the horror he actually felt. This level of detail must have taken months to complete. 6 months, actually. My clients are very thorough. Kozlov gestured toward a workstation that had clearly been prepared for Marcus's arrival. Your modeling software has already been installed, along with real-time weather data and atmospheric readings from sensors throughout the city. Real-time sensors. Kozlov had surveillance equipment positioned throughout Detroit, feeding data back to this facility. Whatever he was planning, it was sophisticated enough to require minute-by-minute atmospheric updates. Dr. Zhao, a new voice, interrupted Marcus's analysis. He turned to see a young woman approaching from across the room, and his heart nearly stopped. Elena Vasquez was alive. She looked exhausted, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her, green eyes suggesting she hadn't slept in days. But she was walking freely, apparently unharmed, and carrying a tablet that suggested she was actively working rather than being held prisoner. Dr. Vasquez, Kozlov said smoothly, "I'd like you to meet our computational modeling specialist, Dr. Michael Zhao. He'll be helping us finalize the atmospheric dispersion calculations." Elena shook Marcus's hand with a grip that lingered just a moment too long, her eyes searching his face with an intensity that suggested she knew more than she was letting on. "Dr. Zhao, I've been looking forward to working with someone who understands the mathematical complexity of what we're attempting." The emphasis on mathematical complexity was subtle but deliberate. Elena was trying to communicate something, though Marcus couldn't be sure what. "The pleasure is all mine," Marcus replied carefully. "I understand you're working on chemical dispersion modeling, among other things." Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus caught the slight tremor of fear underneath the professional facade. "Perhaps you'd like to see what we've accomplished so far." She led him toward her workstation, past other researchers who looked up from their work with expressions ranging from curious to fearful. Most of them appeared to be academics like Elena, brilliant people who had probably been recruited under false pretenses and were now trapped in something far more dangerous than they'd bargained for. Elena's workstation was a masterpiece of applied biochemistry, molecular models, chemical equations, and what appeared to be detailed analysis of nerve agent dispersal patterns. As Marcus studied the data, the true scope of Kozlov's plan became clear. "My God," he whispered, loud enough for Elena to hear, but not Kozlov, who was speaking with other researchers across the room. "Sarin gas. You're modeling sarin gas deployment." Elena nodded almost imperceptibly, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she brought up additional data. 200 kilograms, she murmured under her breath, dispersed from multiple points throughout the financial district during tomorrow's Federal Reserve meeting. Tomorrow. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, like a crushing load. The Federal Reserve was holding their quarterly meeting in Detroit, bringing together central bankers, treasury officials, and financial leaders from across North America. A chemical attack during that meeting would kill hundreds directly and trigger economic chaos that could destabilize the entire continent. "How many people know the full scope?" Marcus asked quietly, pretending to study her atmospheric data while actually memorizing details about the planned attack. "3 of us, I think. Most of the others believe we're working on industrial accident scenarios." Elena's voice was barely audible. "I've been trying to sabotage the calculations, but Kozlov has someone checking my work. Dr. Zhao." Kozlov's voice carried across the room with the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "I hope Dr. Vasquez is bringing you up to speed on our timeline requirements." Marcus straightened and turned toward the arms dealer, his expression showing nothing but academic enthusiasm. "Absolutely fascinating work. The complexity of modeling urban atmospheric dynamics with this level of precision is remarkable." "Excellent. Then you understand why we need your expertise to finalize the calculations." Kozlov approached with 2 other men Marcus hadn't seen before, both carrying themselves with the predatory awareness of professional killers. Time is rather critical, so I'm afraid you'll need to work through the night. Of course. Though, I should mention, for this level of precision, I'll need to verify the dispersion calculations personally. Real-world atmospheric conditions can vary significantly from theoretical models. It was a calculated risk. Marcus was volunteering to examine the actual chemical weapons, potentially putting himself in greater danger, but also gathering intelligence. That could help stop the attack. Kozlov smiled, but his eyes had gone cold. I appreciate your dedication to accuracy, Dr. Zhao. However, the chemical compounds are stored in a separate, highly secure facility. For safety reasons, only essential personnel have access. Essential personnel. That meant Kozlov didn't fully trust him yet, which was both good and bad news. Good because it meant his cover was still intact, bad because it limited his access to the weapons themselves. I understand completely, Marcus replied. Safety protocols are paramount when dealing with hazardous materials. Indeed, Dr. Vasquez can provide you with the chemical specifications you need for your modeling work. I believe you'll find her data quite comprehensive. Kozlov glanced at his watch, an expensive piece that probably cost more than most people's cars. I'll leave you two to work. Guards will be stationed outside to ensure you're not disturbed. Guards. To ensure they couldn't escape, Marcus translated mentally. He was now officially a prisoner, albeit one being treated with elaborate courtesy. As Kozlov and his men left the main work area, Marcus found himself alone with Elena and the other researchers. The sound of boots echoing in the hallway confirmed that armed guards were indeed taking positions outside the exits. Dr. Zhao, Elena said in a normal voice, clearly aware that they were probably being monitored. Let me show you the atmospheric modeling parameters we've been working with. She led him back to her workstation, but this time her movements were more purposeful. As she pulled up data files, her hand briefly touched a piece of paper hidden beneath her keyboard. A note. Marcus realized when she handed him the chemical specifications. The note came with them, folded small enough to be concealed in his palm. Marcus palmed it smoothly while maintaining focus on the computer screen. These dispersion calculations are quite sophisticated, he said, genuinely impressed. Despite the deadly nature of the work, you've accounted for building effects, wind shear, even temperature inversion layers. Dr. Kozlov insisted on maximum accuracy. Elena's voice carried a weight of meaning that suggested Kozlov had used more than professional pressure to ensure compliance. Marcus spent the next hour reviewing the data, learning the details of the planned attack while maintaining his cover as an enthusiastic consultant. The plan was diabolical in its simplicity. Sarin gas released from ventilation systems in 3 downtown buildings during the morning rush hour, when wind patterns would carry the chemical cloud directly through the Federal Reserve Building and the surrounding financial district. Hundreds would die within minutes. Thousands more would be affected by exposure. The economic impact would be incalculable, potentially triggering a financial crisis that could bring down markets around the world, and it was scheduled to begin in less than 18 hours. When he was certain no one was watching, Marcus unfolded Elena's note. The message was brief but terrifying. Kozlov knows you're CIA. This is a trap. They're moving the weapons tonight. Stop them. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice water. His cover was blown, which meant he was already dead. Kozlov was just waiting for the right moment to eliminate him. But more importantly, if they were moving the weapons tonight, the attack timeline had been accelerated. He looked up to find Elena watching him, her green eyes wide with fear and something that might have been hope. Around them, other researchers continued working, oblivious to the fact that they were all trapped in a facility run by a man who planned to murder hundreds of thousands of people. Marcus made a decision that would either save the city or get them all killed. It was time to stop pretending to be Dr. Michael Zhao. Marcus waited until 2 a.m. when the facility had settled into the quiet rhythm of night shift operations. Most of the researchers had been allowed to rest in makeshift dormitories on the second floor, leaving only a skeleton crew to monitor the ongoing calculations. The guards had relaxed slightly, settling into routine patrols that Marcus had been carefully timing for the past 4 hours. Elena sat at her workstation, ostensibly reviewing atmospheric data, but actually watching for Marcus's signal. They had managed to communicate through subtle gestures and carefully coded technical discussions, establishing a basic plan that was probably suicide, but represented their only chance of stopping Kozlov. The first step was gathering intelligence. Marcus needed to know exactly where the chemical weapons were stored, how they were being transported, and when the deployment would begin. Elena had provided some details, but not enough to mount an effective counterstrike. Marcus rose from his workstation, stretching with the weary movements of an academic who had been staring at computer screens for too long. "I need some coffee," he announced to the room in general. "Does anyone else want anything from the break room?" It was a perfectly innocent request that would give him an excuse to move around the facility. The break room was on the second floor, which would allow him to map the building's layout and identify security vulnerabilities. "Coffee sounds great," Elena replied, not looking up from her screen. "Black, 2 sugars." The guard at the main door, a thick-set man with prison tattoos covering his forearms, barely looked up as Marcus walked past. The facility felt secure, comfortable in its isolation and overwhelming firepower. It was exactly the kind of overconfidence that Marcus had learned to exploit. The stairwell to the second floor was dimly lit, with security cameras covering every angle. Marcus moved with the unhurried pace of someone who belonged there, his enhanced glasses recording camera positions and field of view angles. There were blind spots. There were always blind spots, but they were few and well protected. The break room was a converted office space with a coffee machine, some mismatched furniture, and a window that offered a view of the facility's loading dock. As Marcus prepared coffee, he watched a convoy of 3 trucks pulling up to the dock, their headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. His blood went cold. The trucks were chemical transport vehicles, specialized equipment designed to handle hazardous materials safely. Kozlov was moving the weapons tonight, just as Elena had warned. Marcus pulled out his phone, ostensibly to check the time, but actually to activate the emergency beacon hidden in his dental work. A specific sequence of jaw movements would send a distress signal to any CIA monitoring stations within range, along with his GPS coordinates and a coded message indicating chemical weapons threat, assuming anyone was listening. Assuming anyone cared enough about a supposedly retired operative to mount a rescue mission. He was halfway through the activation sequence when a voice behind him made his spine go rigid. "Coffee at 2 in the morning, Dr. Zhao." "How very dedicated." "To you." Marcus turned slowly to find Viktor Kozlov standing in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed men who definitely weren't academic researchers. The arms dealer looked perfectly composed despite the late hour, his expensive suit unwrinkled and his silver hair neatly styled. "Mr. Kozlov," Marcus replied, forcing surprise and nervous pleasure into his voice. "I didn't realize you were still here. I hope I haven't violated any security protocols by..." "Stop." Kozlov's voice cut through the pretense like a blade. "Please, Dr. Zhao, or should I say Agent Chun. Let's dispense with the charade." The moment Marcus had dreaded had arrived. His cover was blown, his escape routes were blocked, and he was trapped in an isolated facility with enough firepower to level a city block. But instead of panic, he felt the familiar calm that came with dropping pretense and embracing the truth of what he was. Marcus straightened, the nervous academic posture falling away like a discarded costume. When he spoke again, his voice carried the controlled authority of someone trained to command life-and-death situations. "How long have you known Kozlov smiled, a predator finally dropping the mask of civilization. Since the moment you walked into that reception, Mr. Chun, did you really think the CIA's facial recognition software was better than mine? I have your complete service record, your psychological profile, even details about that unfortunate incident in Prague 6 months ago. The mention of Prague hit like a physical blow, but Marcus kept his expression neutral. If you've known from the beginning, why the elaborate charade? Because you're exactly what I need, Kozlov replied, stepping into the break room while his guards blocked the doorway. Marcus Chun, former CIA operative specializing in deep cover infiltration and urban warfare. 5 years of experience in operations most people couldn't imagine. And most importantly, a man with absolutely nothing left to lose. Marcus felt a chill of understanding. You want me to help you. I want you to lead the operation. Tomorrow's attack on the Federal Reserve meeting is just the beginning, Mr. Chun. Phase 1 of a much larger plan that will require someone with your particular expertise. The coffee maker gurgled in the background, a mundane sound that seemed obscene in the context of mass murder. Through the window, Marcus could see workers loading equipment from the trucks, moving with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. What makes you think I would help you kill innocent people? Kozlov pulled out a tablet and swiped to a video file. The screen showed Elena Vasquez strapped to a chair in what appeared to be a concrete cell, her face bruised and her eyes wide with terror. Standing behind her was a man Marcus recognized from CIA files, Dmitry Volkov, Kozlov's chief enforcer and a man who took personal pleasure in inflicting pain. Dr. Vasquez has been quite helpful with our chemical calculations, Kozlov said conversationally. But her usefulness is limited. Dmitry, on the other hand, has some very creative ideas about how to motivate uncooperative academics. The video was a live feed, Marcus realized. Elena was being held somewhere in this facility, probably in the basement level he hadn't been allowed to access. What do you want? Marcus asked quietly. Your complete cooperation. Help me deploy the chemical weapons tomorrow morning, and Dr. Vasquez lives to see another day. Refuse, and Dmitry will spend the next several hours demonstrating why I'm considered one of the world's most persuasive negotiators. It was the classic terrorist's dilemma: cooperate with evil or watch innocents suffer. Marcus had been trained to resist such pressure, to accept that some sacrifices were necessary for the greater good. But as he looked at Elena's terrified face on the tablet screen, he felt the same crushing weight of responsibility that had haunted him since Prague. You're asking me to help you murder hundreds of people. I'm asking you to help me change the world, Kozlov corrected. The Federal Reserve meeting is just the opening move, Mr. Chun. A demonstration of what's possible when visionary leadership combines with adequate resources and the will to act decisively. Marcus stared at the tablet, Elena's image burning itself into his memory alongside Sarah's face. 2 brilliant women, both caught in the crossfire of operations he couldn't control. I need to think about it, he said finally. Kozlov nodded as if he had expected this response. Of course. Take all the time you need. You have exactly 30 minutes to decide. My men will escort you back to your workstation, where you can contemplate the weight of your choice. As the guards moved to flank him, Marcus made a decision that would either save Elena's life or get them both killed. He activated the final sequence of jaw movements that would trigger his emergency beacon, sending a coded distress signal to any CIA monitoring station within 50 miles. The signal would include his location, a chemical weapons threat warning, and a timestamp indicating immediate action required. Whether anyone would receive it, whether anyone would care enough to act on it, those were questions he couldn't answer. But as he was marched back to the main work area under armed guard, Marcus began planning for the possibility that rescue wasn't coming. Elena Vasquez was somewhere in this facility, And the chemical weapons that could kill half of Detroit were being loaded onto trucks as he walked. In 30 minutes, he would give Kozlov his answer. But he wouldn't wait that long to act. The war that had started 6 months ago in Prague was about to end tonight in a converted warehouse outside Detroit. One way or another, the tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Marcus returned to his workstation with the measured pace of a man contemplating betraying everything he had ever believed in. The guards took positions where they could watch his every movement, assault rifles held with casual competence that suggested extensive combat experience. Around the room, other researchers continued their work, oblivious to the life and death negotiations taking place among them. Elena looked up as he approached, her green eyes searching his face for some hint of what had transpired upstairs. Marcus sat heavily in his chair and pulled up the atmospheric modeling software, his fingers moving across the keyboard with apparent resignation. But beneath the defeated exterior, Marcus Chun was calculating angles, distances, and probability. Matrices with the cold precision of a man trained to turn impossible situations to his advantage. The emergency beacon was active, broadcasting his location and situation to any CIA monitoring station within range. But rescue, if it came at all, would take time that Elena didn't have and time that would allow Kozlov to complete his preparations for tomorrow's attack. Marcus needed to create an opportunity, and he needed to do it without getting Elena killed in the crossfire. He began typing code into the atmospheric modeling program, ostensibly working on dispersion calculations, but actually uploading a virus into the facility's computer network. The malware was sophisticated as CIA creation, designed to infiltrate and disable enemy communication systems. If it worked, it would cut Kozlov's connection to the outside world and prevent him from coordinating with deployment teams. 23 minutes remaining until Kozlov's deadline. Elena rose from her chair and walked toward the coffee station. At the far end of the room, a movement that brought her past Marcus's workstation. As she passed, she dropped a small piece of paper beside his keyboard, another note, passed with the practiced sleight of hand of someone who had learned to communicate under surveillance. Marcus palmed the note while continuing to type. His enhanced glasses recording the guards' positions and movement patterns. There were 3 men watching the main work area, plus at least 2 more stationed at the exits. Standard security protocol for a high-value facility, but manageable for someone with Marcus's training. The note contained a hand-drawn map of the facility's basement level, including the location of Elena's cell and what appeared to be a chemical storage area. At the bottom, in tiny print, Elena had written, "Fire suppression system can be activated from the security office. Creates confusion." Fire suppression. Marcus almost smiled despite the deadly seriousness of the situation. Most modern facilities used halon gas for fire suppression, a chemical that displaced oxygen and would incapacitate anyone breathing it within minutes. If Elena was right, activating the system would effectively gas the guards while giving Marcus time to mount a rescue. 18 minutes remaining. Marcus stood and stretched, the movement bringing him closer to the nearest guard, a lean man with dead eyes and knife scars on his hands. "Excuse me," Marcus said in the nervous tone of Dr. Michael Zhao. "Is there a restroom I could use?" "All this coffee." The guard nodded toward a hallway that led to the facility's administrative offices. "Third door on the left. Make it quick." "Perfect." The security office was located in the same hallway. According to the building plans Marcus had memorized during his initial reconnaissance, if he could reach it without raising suspicion, he might be able to activate the fire suppression system and create enough chaos to mount a rescue operation. Marcus walked toward the hallway with the unhurried pace of a man answering nature's call. The guard followed at a discreet distance, standard procedure for escorting potentially hostile prisoners. but close enough for Marcus to exploit if the opportunity arose. The security office was the second door on the right, directly across from the men's restroom. Through the frosted glass, Marcus could see the glow of multiple monitors and the silhouette of a single operator monitoring the Fazeglas facility's surveillance cameras. Marcus pushed open the restroom door, then immediately spun and drove his elbow into the following guard's solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping, and Marcus's knee found his chin with surgical precision. The guard dropped unconsciously to the hallway floor. 14 minutes remaining. Marcus dragged the unconscious man into the restroom, then returned to the hallway and approached the security office. The door was locked, but the lock was electronic vulnerable to the small EMP device hidden in his watchband. A brief electromagnetic pulse disabled the lock, and Marcus slipped into the security office like a ghost. The operator, a middle-aged man with the soft build of someone who spent his days watching screens, looked up in surprise. "Hey, you can't be in here." Marcus's hand found the pressure point behind the man's ear, and he crumpled forward onto his keyboard. Non-lethal but effective. Operator would be unconscious for at least 20 minutes. The security console was a masterpiece of modern surveillance technology. Dozens of monitors showing every angle of the facility, audio pickups that could hear whispered conversations, and environmental controls that managed everything from lighting to air conditioning to fire suppression. Marcus found the fire suppression controls and paused, his finger hovering over the activation switch. Once he triggered the system, there would be no going back. The halon gas would incapacitate everyone in the facility within 3 minutes, giving him a narrow window to rescue Elena and stop the chemical weapons from leaving the building. But it would also put the other researchers at risk, innocent people who had been caught up in Kozlov's operation through deception rather than choice. 11 minutes remaining. Marcus made his choice and activated the fire suppression system for the basement level only. Elena's location would be flooded with halon gas, but the main work areas would remain clear. It was a compromise that might get him killed, but it was the only option that didn't sacrifice innocent lives. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility as the basement fire suppression system activated. On the security monitors, Marcus watched chaos erupt as guards rushed toward the basement, believing they were responding to an actual emergency. He had perhaps 3 minutes before they realized the fire was a diversion. Marcus left the security office and ran toward the basement access stairs, his enhanced glasses providing navigation data in real time. The stairwell was filled with smoke, not from fire, but from the halon gas venting through the building's air circulation system. The basement level was a maze of concrete corridors and industrial equipment, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast sharp shadows in every direction. Emergency lighting was flashing, and the sound of ventilation fans working overtime filled the air with mechanical noise. Elena's cell was at the far end of the basement, past the chemical storage area, and through a section that appeared to be used for vehicle maintenance. Marcus moved through the corridors with practiced stealth, his enhanced glasses highlighting potential threats and escape routes. He found Elena's cell exactly where her map had indicated, a reinforced concrete room with a steel door and electronic lock. Through a small window, he could see her slumped in a chair, unconscious from the halon gas but breathing steadily. The electronic lock yielded to the same EMP device he had used upstairs. Marcus pushed open the door and rushed to Elena's side, checking her pulse and breathing. She was alive, just unconscious. The halon gas was non-lethal, but highly effective at incapacitating targets. Marcus lifted Elena in a fireman's carry, her weight manageable but awkward in the narrow corridor. He had perhaps 90 seconds before the guards realized the fire was a false alarm and began searching for the real threat. As he carried Elena toward the stairwell, Marcus's enhanced glasses detected movement ahead, 3 guards moving toward the basement. assault rifles ready for combat. They had figured out the deception faster than he had hoped. Marcus sat Elena down gently behind a concrete support pillar and prepared for the fight of his life. 3 armed men in a confined space, with an unconscious woman to protect and no backup coming. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation that CIA training had prepared him for. The first guard rounded the corner at exactly the wrong moment, his assault rifle sweeping the corridor for targets. Marcus was already moving, covering the distance between them in 2 silent steps. His hand found the rifle barrel, redirecting it toward the ceiling as his knee drove into the guard's sternum. The weapon discharged, concrete dust raining from the ceiling as Marcus twisted the rifle from the guard's grip. A sharp elbow to the temple, and the man was down. The second guard appeared in the doorway, already firing. Marcus rolled left, using the concrete pillar as cover while bullets sparked off reinforced walls. The enhanced optics in his glasses calculated angle and distance, providing targeting data as he brought the captured assault rifle to bear. A 3-round burst caught the second guard's center mass, dropping him instantly. The third guard was smarter, using tactical movement and cover as he advanced down the corridor. Marcus could hear him breathing, could track his movement by the sound of his boots on concrete, but couldn't get a clear shot without exposing himself to return fire. 4 minutes remaining until Kozlov's deadline. Marcus made a decision that went against every tactical principle he had ever learned. He stood up and walked into the open assault rifle held casually at his side. "I'm CIA," he called out in a calm, authoritative voice. "This facility is surrounded by federal agents. Surrender now and you'll live to see the trial." It was a complete bluff. No rescue was coming, and Marcus was entirely alone. But sometimes psychology was more effective than firepower. The third guard stepped into view, his weapon trained on Marcus's chest. "You're lying. There's nobody coming." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But in 30 seconds, that won't matter. Because in 30 seconds, I'm going to kill you and everyone else in this facility unless you help me stop Kozlov." The guard's eyes flickered with uncertainty. In that moment of doubt, Marcus moved. The assault rifle came up in a fluid arc, muzzle finding target before the guard could react. But instead of firing, Marcus paused. "Last chance," he said quietly. The guard lowered his weapon. Marcus zip-tied the man with cable from his tactical kit, then returned to Elena. She was beginning to stir, the effects of the halon gas wearing off. Her green eyes opened and focused on his face with difficulty. "Marcus," she whispered, "you came back." "We're not out yet," he replied, helping her to her feet. "Can you walk?" Elena nodded, though she swayed slightly from the lingering effects of the gas. "The chemical weapons, they're loading them into trucks. If they leave the facility, I know. We're going to stop them. 2 minutes remaining until Kozlov's deadline." But Marcus was done playing by other people's rules. He shouldered the assault rifle and helped Elena toward the stairwell. Above them, he could hear shouts and running footsteps as the facility's security forces realized they had been played. The final battle was about to begin. Marcus and Elena reached the main floor to find chaos erupting throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red against the walls. Alarms continued their ear-splitting wail, and armed men ran through corridors with the desperate urgency of soldiers who had lost control of their battlefield. Through the building's reinforced windows, Marcus could see the convoy of chemical transport trucks still parked at the loading dock, their hazardous cargo half loaded, but not yet departed. There was still time to stop the deployment, but not much. The main computer server, Elena whispered as they crouched behind an overturned desk. "If we can access it, I can upload a virus that will corrupt all the atmospheric modeling data. Without accurate dispersion calculations, they can't target the Federal Reserve Building effectively." Marcus nodded, his enhanced glasses scanning. The facility layout for the most direct route to the server room. Second floor, east wing. But we'll have to get past. The conversation was interrupted by the distinctive sound of assault rifle fire from the main work area. Through gaps in the wall, Marcus could see researchers diving under desks while guards swept the room with automatic weapons, clearly looking for the source of the security breach. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Wayne State University lay motionless, near an overturned computer workstation, blood pooling beneath her head. Marcus felt a surge of cold rage. These people had been innocent academics, caught up in Kozlov's operation through deception, and now being murdered for the crime of witnessing too much. "We need a distraction," Marcus said, checking the magazine of his captured assault rifle. 24 rounds remaining, plus 2 spare magazines he had taken from the unconscious guards. Against a facility full of professional killers, it wasn't much. Elena reached into her lab coat and withdrew a small device that looked like a smartphone, but was actually something far more dangerous. "Portable MP generator," she explained, seeing Marcus's puzzled expression. "I've been working out a way to disable their communication equipment." "That'll work," Marcus said, then paused as movement caught his eye. Through the window overlooking the loading dock, he could see Viktor Kozlov himself directing the loading operation, his expensive suit replaced by tactical gear that suggested he was preparing for combat. Kozlov was no longer the cultured academic, pretending to run an environmental consulting firm. He was a military commander overseeing a weapons deployment that would kill hundreds of thousands of people. "Change of plans," Marcus said grimly. "You go for the server room. I'm going after Kozlov." Elena grabbed his arm. "That's suicide. He's got a dozen men with him, all armed with military-grade weapons." Marcus looked down at her hand on his arm, then into her green eyes that reminded him so much of Sarah's. "Elena, in 6 hours, sarin gas is going to be released into the Detroit financial district. Unless we stop it here, tonight, 500,000 people are going to die. I won't let that happen again." Again, the word hung between them like a confession, carrying the weight of Prague and Sarah's death and 6 months of guilt that had nearly destroyed him. Elena studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "The server room is in the northeast corner, second floor. I'll need 5 minutes to upload the virus and corrupt their targeting data." "You'll have it," Marcus promised, though he had no idea how he could possibly hold off Kozlov's forces for 5 minutes with limited ammunition and no backup. They moved toward the stairwell, using overturned furniture and concrete pillars for cover as armed guards swept the main floor. Marcus's enhanced glasses tracked enemy movement patterns, highlighting optimal routes and identifying potential threats before they became visible at the base of the stairs. They separated. Elena headed up toward the server room while Marcus moved toward the loading dock, every step taking him closer to a confrontation that would almost certainly end in his death. The loading dock was accessible through a service corridor that connected to the main warehouse floor. Marcus approached with tactical precision, his enhanced glasses providing real-time intelligence about enemy positions and movement patterns. Kozlov stood near the lead truck, speaking rapidly into a satellite phone while his men completed the loading operation. The chemical weapons steel cylinders marked with hazmat symbols were being secured in specialized compartments, designed to prevent accidental release during transport. Marcus counted 12 men, all armed with assault rifles and wearing tactical gear that suggested military or paramilitary training. Against those odds, frontal assault would be suicide. He needed to be smarter, more creative. The facility's fire suppression system gave him an idea. Marcus retraced his steps to the security office, where the unconscious operator was still slumped over his console. The man was beginning to stir, so Marcus zip-tied him to his chair and gagged him with electrical tape. The environmental controls were more sophisticated than he had initially realized. In addition to fire suppression, the system could control lighting, ventilation, and even the building's electrical grid. With the right sequence of commands, Marcus could turn the facility itself into a weapon. He started with the lights, plunging the loading dock into complete darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after 30 seconds, but the brief period of confusion gave him time to move into position. Next, he activated the fire suppression system for the entire ground floor, flooding the loading dock with halon gas that would incapacitate anyone who breathed it for more than a few minutes. The chemical weapons were sealed in protective containers, but Kozlov's men weren't. Shouts erupted from the loading dock as armed guards began collapsing from oxygen deprivation. Marcus pulled on a gas mask he had taken from the security office and moved toward the chaos, an assault rifle ready for combat. Kozlov was still conscious, protected by a portable oxygen supply, but most of his men were down. The arms dealer saw Marcus approaching through the smoke and raised his own weapon, a custom pistol that looked expensive enough to buy a small car. "Agent Chun," Kozlov called out, his voice muffled by his oxygen mask. "I have to admire your dedication." Most men would have taken the money and walked away. Marcus kept his rifle trained on Kozlov's center mass, finger ready on the trigger. "Where I come from, we don't make deals with terrorists." "Terrorist?" Kozlov laughed, the sound echoing strangely through his respirator. "I'm a patriot, Agent Chun. Everything I've done has been in service to my country's interests. Your country doesn't benefit from mass murder in Detroit. My country benefits from American weakness, from economic chaos that destabilizes your currency and destroys confidence in your financial institutions." Kozlov's pistol remained trained on Marcus. "This attack will accomplish more than a conventional army could achieve in 10 years of warfare." Through his enhanced glasses, Marcus could see Elena moving through the second floor, approaching the server room where she could upload the virus that would corrupt Kozlov's targeting data. He needed to buy her more time. "It won't work," Marcus said, taking a step closer to Kozlov. "The Federal Reserve has contingency plans, emergency protocols. Even if you kill everyone at tomorrow's meeting, the financial system will adapt." Kozlov's smile was visible even through his oxygen mask. "You underestimate the psychological impact, Agent Chun. When sarin gas kills hundreds of America's financial leaders on live television, when the footage spreads across every social media platform on Earth, panic will do more damage than any bomb ever could. Leave television." Marcus felt ice water flood his veins as the full scope of Kozlov's plan became clear. The Federal Reserve meeting was being broadcast live to financial markets worldwide. Kozlov wasn't just planning mass murder, he was planning to traumatize an entire planet. "The markets will crash within hours," Kozlov continued, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a man watching his life's work come to fruition. "Your dollar will become worthless paper. Your economy will collapse, and in the chaos that follows, stronger nations will rise to take America's place." Nations like Russia? Nations with the will to act decisively when history demands it. Marcus took another step forward, bringing him within striking distance. But Kozlov was ready, his pistol steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Around the loading dock, his men were beginning to recover from the halon gas, reaching for weapons with the dogged determination of professionals who had survived worse. "You're too late anyway," Kozlov said. "Even if you kill me, even if you destroy these weapons, I have contingency plans. Backup sites, alternative deployment methods. Tomorrow's attack will happen with or without me." It was probably true. Men like Kozlov didn't put all their eggs in one basket, especially when the Bosqua stakes were this high. But Marcus had learned long ago that sometimes you had to play the hand you were dealt, even when the odds were hopeless. "Maybe," Marcus said quietly, "but you won't be alive to see it." He fired. The assault rifle bucked against his shoulder as a 3-round burst caught Kozlov's center mass, spinning the arms dealer around and sending him crashing into the side of the nearest truck. The expensive pistol flew from nerveless fingers, clattering across the concrete floor. Marcus didn't have time to confirm the kill. Kozlov's men were recovering quickly, and the sound of gunfire would bring reinforcements from throughout the facility. He needed to finish the mission and extract Elena before they were overwhelmed. The chemical weapons were still loaded in the trucks, sealed in their protective containers but ready for transport. Marcus couldn't defuse them. That would require specialized equipment and more time than he had. But he could make sure they never reached their targets. Marcus pulled the pin from a thermite grenade he had taken from one of the unconscious guards, then wedged it between two of the chemical containers in the lead truck. Thermite burned at over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel and destroy the delicate dispersal mechanisms that made the sarin gas weaponizable. The grenade detonated with a brilliant white flash, instantly vaporizing the truck's cargo bay and sending molten metal spraying across the loading dock. The chemical weapons were destroyed, their contents burning away in temperatures that would break down even the most stable nerve agents. Marcus repeated the process with the other two trucks, working with mechanical efficiency while bullets sparked off concrete around him. Kozlov's men were recovering their weapons and returning fire, but the halon gas and emergency lighting made accurate shooting nearly impossible. The last thermite grenade detonated just as Elena's voice crackled through his earpiece. She had activated the facility's internal communication system from the server room. "Marcus, I'm in. The virus is uploading now, but I'm reading multiple backup servers throughout the city. Kozlov has distributed copies of the targeting data to prevent." Exactly what we're doing. Multiple backup servers. That meant even destroying the chemical weapons here wouldn't stop the attack. Kozlov's people could manufacture new nerve agents as long as they had the atmospheric modeling data that would let them target the Federal Reserve building accurately. Marcus made a split-second decision that would either save hundreds of thousands of lives or doom them all. "Elena, how long do you need to trace the backup servers?" "Maybe 10 minutes if I can access Kozlov's personal files." "But Marcus, there are armed men coming up the stairs." "I can hear them in the hallway. 10 minutes. Marcus looked around the loading dock, counting the guards who were still combat effective. 8 men with assault rifles, plus whatever reinforcements were moving to Elena's position. Against his remaining ammunition and no backup, it might as well have been 100, but 10 minutes was 10 minutes. Marcus grabbed Kozlov's fallen pistol, a custom .45, with smart gun technology that would only fire for authorized users. The biometric scanner beeped softly as it read the arms dealer's fingerprints from the grip, then displayed a green light indicating the weapon was ready to fire. Marcus pressed Kozlov's dead hand to the pistol grip until the scanner activated, then pocketed the weapon. It would give him a few extra shots when his rifle ammunition ran out. "Elena, I'm coming to you. Hold position and keep working on those servers." Marcus fought his way across the loading dock, using the burning truck wreckage for cover while methodically eliminating Kozlov's men. Each shot had to count. He was down to his last magazine, and every bullet brought him closer to being completely defenseless. The stairwell to the second floor was a killing ground, with armed guards positioned at the top and bottom to catch anyone trying to move between levels. Marcus dealt with the problem by climbing the outside of the building, using maintenance ladders and window ledges to reach the second floor from an unexpected direction. The server room was under siege when Marcus arrived, with 4 guards positioned outside the door, and the sound of Elena's laptop keyboard echoing from within. She was still working, still trying to trace Kozlov's backup servers, but she was running out of time. Marcus came through a window behind the guards, his captured assault rifle cutting them down before they realized the threat had flanked them. It was brutal, efficient work, the kind of close-quarters combat that had made him the CIA's most effective urban operative. Elena looked up as he burst into the server room, her green eyes wide with relief and terror. "Marcus, I've got it 7. Backup servers throughout the city, all connected to a central command node in the Renaissance Center. If I can corrupt that node ... How long? 3 minutes, maybe 4. Marcus checked his ammunition. 6 rounds were left in the rifle, plus Kozlov's pistol with an unknown number of shots. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. "Do it," he said, taking position by the door. "I'll hold them off." The next 4 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. Guards rushed the server room in waves, each assault met by precise gunfire. That dropped them in the doorway. Marcus fought with the cold efficiency of a machine. But he was human, and humans made mistakes. A lucky shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a rack of server equipment. Blood ran down his arm as he struggled to maintain his grip on Kozlov's pistol. Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard, racing against time and the sound of approaching boots. "Almost there," she muttered. "Just need another minute ... Marcus didn't have another minute. The guards were coordinating their next assault, and he was down to 3 bullets. When they came again, they would overwhelm his position through sheer numbers. That's when the cavalry arrived. The sound of helicopters filled the air outside, followed by the distinctive crack of sniper rifles and the controlled explosions of flashbang grenades. Through the windows, Marcus could see tactical teams rappelling from helicopters, their black-clad forms moving with the precision of elite military units. "This is the FBI hostage rescue team," a voice boomed through external speakers. "The facility is surrounded. Lay down your weapons and surrender immediately." The emergency beacon had worked. Someone had been monitoring. Someone had cared enough to mount a rescue operation. Marcus felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. Elena's laptop chimed softly. "Got it. All backup servers are corrupted. The targeting data is destroyed." Through the window, Marcus could see the sunrise beginning to paint the Detroit skyline in shades of gold and orange. In a few hours, the Federal Reserve meeting would begin as scheduled. Financial leaders from across North America would gather. In safety, unaware of how close they had come to dying in a chemical fire. The attack had been stopped. The city was safe. Elena was alive. For the first time since Prague, Marcus Chun had succeeded in saving everyone who mattered. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat in a quiet cafe in downtown Detroit, watching the morning news on a television mounted above the counter. The lead story was the Federal Reserve's announcement of new security protocols, following what the media was calling a credible terrorist threat that was successfully neutralized by federal law enforcement. The full truth would never be reported. Of course, the public didn't need to know how close they had come to witnessing the worst chemical weapons attack in American history. Better to let them believe that their government was always competent, always prepared, always one step ahead of the threats that lurked in the shadows. Elena approached his table carrying 2 cups of coffee, her auburn hair catching the morning sunlight streaming through the cafe's large windows. She moved with the confident grace of someone who had survived the unthinkable and come out stronger, though Marcus could still see traces of the trauma in the careful way she scanned their surroundings before sitting down. "Still making the news," she observed, nodding toward the television. "Though I notice they're not mentioning the computational modeling specialist who helped save the city." Marcus smiled, a genuine expression that had become easier in recent weeks. Academic heroes don't make for good television. Besides, Dr. Michael Zhao officially never existed. It was true. The CIA had erased every trace of his cover identity with the same efficiency they had used to create it. Dr. Michael Zhao had vanished from university records, credit databases, and social media as if he had never been born. Only the memories remained, and those belonged to people who understood the value of keeping secrets. Elena sipped her coffee and studied. Marcus is faced with the analytical intensity of a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Any word from Director Hayes about your status? Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew an official-looking envelope bearing the CIA seal. Termination of employment, effective immediately. Full pension, medical benefits, and a letter of commendation that will never see the light of day. So you're really done this time? I'm really done. Marcus set the envelope aside and met Alana's gaze. No more calls in the middle of the night. No more covers to maintain, no more wars to fight. Marcus Chun is officially retired. It was what he had wanted for 6 months, the civilian life he had tried to build after Prague. But sitting in the cafe with Elena, watching ordinary people live ordinary lives, Marcus realized that the life he wanted wasn't necessarily the life he had been building. What will you do now? Elena asked of Marcus, gestured around the cafe, taking in the mix of students, professionals, and retirees who populated this corner of Detroit on a Tuesday morning. I was thinking about staying in the city for a while. Maybe getting a real job as a software developer. Living like a normal person. And what does a normal person do when a brilliant biochemist asks him to dinner? Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a weight he had been carrying since Sarah's death finally beginning to lift. A normal person says yes and suggests that excellent Italian place in Corktown. Alana's smile was radiant. Romano's? I hear they make excellent espresso. They finished their coffee in comfortable conversation, talking about everything except chemical weapons, covert operations, and the night 3 weeks ago when they had saved a city. There would be time for those memories later, when the immediate trauma had faded and they could process what they had survived together. As they prepared to leave, Marcus's enhanced glasses, which he wore now out of habit rather than necessity, chimed softly with an incoming message. For a moment, his blood went cold as he imagined Director Hayes with one more mission, one more favor, one more reason why Marcus Chun couldn't retire. But the message wasn't from the CIA. It was from Dr. Jennifer Walsh at Wayne State University, who had survived her injuries from that night at Kozlov's facility and was now offering Marcus a position as a visiting professor in the computer science department, a real job, a legitimate career, a chance to use his skills for something other than violence and deception. Marcus deleted the message from his glasses memory and looked at Elena, who was waiting patiently while he processed whatever had captured his attention. Good news or bad news? She asked. Good news, Marcus said, and meant it. Definitely good news. They walked out of the cafe together, into the Detroit morning, and toward whatever came next. Behind them, the television continued its endless cycle of news and analysis. Most of it focused on political scandals and celebrity gossip, rather than the quiet heroism that had saved a city. That was fine with Marcus. He had spent enough years being the man who stood between civilization and chaos, fighting wars that civilians never knew existed. Now he wanted to be one of those civilians, someone who worried about mundane things, like mortgage payments and weekend plans rather than nuclear weapons and terrorist plots, someone who could love a brilliant woman without worrying that his enemies would use her against him, someone who could sleep through the night without checking for exits and weapons, someone who could look in the mirror and see Marcus Chun, the teacher, the programmer, the boyfriend, rather than Marcus Chun, the killer. As they walked toward Elena's car, Marcus caught their reflection in a storefront window. His thick glasses made him look harmless, academic, forgettable. It was the perfect disguise for a man trying to disappear into civilian life. But for the first time since Prague, Marcus wasn't interested in disguises. He was interested in being exactly who he appeared to be, a smart, slightly awkward guy who had found someone worth building a life with. The war was over. The city was safe. The woman was saved, and Marcus Chun was finally truly, completely done being a spy. The lecture hall at Wayne State University was packed with undergraduate computer science students, their laptops open and fingers poised over keyboards as Professor Marcus Chun explained the principles of atmospheric modeling. It was the kind of mundane academic work that would have bored him to tears a year ago. But now he found genuine satisfaction in watching young minds grapple with complex mathematical concepts. The key to accurate dispersion modeling, Marcus explained, adjusting his glasses as he pointed to equations on the whiteboard, is understanding that you're not just predicting particle movement, you're predicting chaos. Small changes in initial conditions can lead to dramatically different outcomes. A student in the front row raised her hand. Professor Chen, have atmospheric models ever been used for anything other than weather prediction and pollution control? Marcus paused, the innocent question triggering memories of nerve agents and chemical weapons and a night 6 months ago when those same equations had been used to plan mass murder. But that was another life, another version of himself that existed only in classified files and bad dreams. Atmospheric modeling has many applications, he said carefully. Emergency response planning, industrial safety protocols, environmental impact studies. The mathematics remains the same, only the variables change. It was true enough, and the student seemed satisfied with the answer. Marcus returned to his lecture, covering material that he could have taught in his sleep, but that represented the cutting edge of knowledge for most of his audience. When class ended, Marcus gathered his papers and headed toward his office. Small space he shared with 2 other visiting professors. The walls were covered with academic journals, student papers, and a single photograph of him and Elena at last month's faculty mixer. Elena was waiting in his office, having finished her own lectures for the day. She had taken a permanent position in the university's biochemistry department, her expertise in atmospheric chemistry making her invaluable for legitimate environmental research. Sometimes Marcus marveled at how they had both found ways to use their specialized knowledge for constructive purposes rather than destruction. How did the atmospheric modeling lecture go? She asked, looking up from the research paper she was reviewing. No one asked about chemical weapons deployment, so I'm calling it a success. Elena laughed, a sound that still sent warmth through Marcus's chest after 6 months of hearing it regularly. The bar for academic success has gotten remarkably low. Marcus sat behind his desk and pulled up his email, scanning through the usual collection of academic announcements, student questions, and administrative requests. Nothing from the CIA, nothing from Director Hayes, nothing that would pull him back into the world he had left behind. It had taken months for him to truly believe that his retirement was permanent. He still checked for surveillance, still analyzed exit routes, still woke up sometimes reaching for weapons that weren't there. But the paranoia was fading, replaced by the comfortable routines of civilian life. I got an interesting call today, Elena said, setting aside her research paper. Dr. Morrison from the CDC wants to know if we'd be interested in consulting on bioterror response protocols. Apparently, our experience with atmospheric modeling and biochemical applications makes us uniquely qualified. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with any mention of his former life. What kind of consulting? Defensive planning. How to model chemical agent dispersion for evacuation planning, medical response protocols, that sort of thing. Using our skills to help save lives instead of ... She trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. Instead of planning to take them. Marcus understood the implication, and the offer was tempting. A chance to use his specialized knowledge for protection rather than destruction, to help prevent the kind of attack they had stopped 6 months ago. It would be completely legitimate, Elena continued. Academic consulting, published research, open collaboration with federal agencies. No more shadow operations or cover identities. Marcus thought about it for a long moment, weighing the appeal of meaningful work against the comfort of anonymity. Finally he nodded. Let's do it, but on one condition: no field work. I'm done being the man who goes into dangerous situations. From now on, I'm strictly a behind-the-scenes guy." Alina smiled and reached across the desk to take his hand. "I think I can live with that arrangement." As they gathered their things to leave for the day, Marcus caught sight of himself in the window reflection again. The same thick glasses, the same rumpled academic appearance, the same harmless exterior that had once been a carefully crafted disguise, but now it wasn't a disguise at all. It was simply who he was, Professor Marcus Chen, expert in computational modeling, boyfriend to a brilliant biochemist and former CIA operative, who had finally found a way to serve his country without losing his soul, the man who had once demolished. 3 armed attackers in a Detroit alley was still there, lurking beneath the surface like a sleeping predator. But he didn't need to be awakened anymore. The threats that had defined Marcus's life for so long were being handled by other people now, younger operatives who carried the same weight of responsibility that had nearly broken him. Marcus Chen was done being that person. He had found something better, a life worth living, work worth doing, and someone worth sharing it all with. As they walked across campus toward the parking garage, Elena slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus looked up at the Detroit skyline. The same view he had seen from Kozlov's facility 6 months ago, when the city had been hours away from a chemical catastrophe. Now it was just a beautiful afternoon in a thriving city, full of people who would never know how close they had come to losing everything. "I'm thinking," Marcus said, "that sometimes the best victory is the one nobody ever hears about." Alina squeezed his hand. "And sometimes the best life is the boring one." Marcus smiled and adjusted his glasses one final time. "Here's to boring." They walked toward their car and their quiet evening together, 2 former warriors who had found peace in the most unlikely place, a classroom where the only battles fought were against ignorance, and the only weapons were knowledge and compassion. Behind them, the Wayne State University campus buzzed with the energy of young minds learning to change the world. It was exactly where Marcus Chen belonged, not as a shadow warrior fighting invisible wars, but as a teacher helping to build the future one student at a time. The glasses were just glasses now. The man behind them was finally, truly free. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tailies. What kind of story would you like to hear next?